Now, it's very common to write code that will have a problem at some point. Maybe it's not a problem that you could ever foresee, or maybe it's a problem that happens rarely enough that you don't want the program to terminate, but you still need to catch the error and let it continue on. Sometimes the error could be, hey, my network connection all of a sudden closed down. Let's go ahead and still do other stuff while that connection is coming up. Or maybe it could be an error of, hey, this array suddenly shrank in size. Let's go ahead and rebuild a new array and make it bigger. And so that is known as exception handling. And it's very, very common to have all sorts of different types of exception handling in your program. So the basic syntax of it is you want to try to do something, and if whatever you're trying to do fails, you need to catch the exception, and then sometimes you may want to, well, once we're done with that, finally, we want to do something else. So this syntax right here is very common. You want to try to do something, you catch if there is an error, and then finally you do whatever is needed to be done. And so what sort of errors could there be? Well, we saw a couple in the last set of videos of a dictionary and a list. And so let's go ahead and create something. I'm going to go ahead and just start with an array. So let's do an int array. My nums is equal to new int array, and I'm just going to populate it with 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. So if I do a console.write line and I do my nums.length and I run this, I'm going to get out 5 because there are 5 elements in there. And I can access each individual value. I could say my nums 0, for instance, and get out 1. What if I try to go to my nums 5? And so my nums 5, I get an unhandled exception. And the specific exception is index out of range exception. And so I was trying to access an index which was beyond the bounds of the array. So let's go ahead and handle this particular problem. So let me go ahead and try this. So I'm going to go ahead and try to do this, and if an exception is raised, catch, I'm going to catch that particular error. So in this case, there is an index out of range exception. So E. And I'll just go ahead and do a console.write line. Your index was out of range. And I'm not going to worry about finally now. So now when we run this, instead of my program crashing and terminating, I'm getting out to the console, your index was out of range. Whereas if I choose an index which is in range, in this case 5, notice that I'm getting, well, this is index 4, which will print out value 5. Notice I'm getting 5 printed out to the console. In both cases, my program is not terminating unsuccessfully. Whereas if we look to see what happens when it does terminate unsuccessfully, get rid of this try, and it changes to a 5. Specifically, note that exit code 0 there. Now I'm getting this unhandled exception here, and I get process finish with exit code -532462766. That means that, well, it terminated. It's an exit code that it threw, but it threw that because of this unhandled exception system index out of range exception. So there's a couple of different indexes or different exceptions that we can put here. So instead of index out of range exception, we can do argument out of range exception, which is very similar to the index out of range. These will both trigger, actually this one is going to be different. Let's say argument out of range. Yeah, this should be index out of range. Argument out of range is going to be an argument that's outside of the range of valid values, whereas index out of range is an index that's outside of the bounds of an array of an array or collection. So they are different. They have similar ideas, but really it is whatever error you were expecting before, this is how you would actually catch it. Now this E here, we haven't done anything with that. So instead of saying your index was out of range, let's go ahead and just say console.writeLine. We'll say E dot, and there's a couple of things that we can do in here. So there's data, message, source, help link, H result, inner exception, stack trace, target site. So if we do data, let's go ahead and indent both of these because the indentation is bugging me, and we run this. Notice that now we get your index was out of range, and then we get system collections list dictionary internal. If we say message here, and we run this, we get index was outside of the bounds of the array. And if we get, what were the other ones? Source. Source is going to be from CS exceptions, which is the class that we're actually in and the namespace. Help link. This would be a gets or sets a link to the help file associated with this exception. Is there a help file associated with it? There is not. And we have H result. This is going to be an integer, which will be the result value, which is the negative. That's going to be the smallest value for an integer. So there's a number of things that you can do here. You can also just say E, and this will print out the error that we were seeing before, system index out of range exception, so on and so forth, and it will actually show you all the content, but notice that the program is not actually terminating unsuccessfully. It is still terminating successfully even with that index out of range exception.